The Prisoner's Dilemma, PD, is a simple story about two suspects who are interrogated separately. Each can either stay silent, which is cooperate, or betray the other, which is defect. If both stay silent, they get a light sentence, but if one betrays while the other stays silent, the betrayer walks free and the silent one gets a heavy sentence. In business, the suspects are usually two firms that face a one-time decision, such as setting a price, launching a costly advertising campaign, or deciding whether to invest in a shared standard. Cooperation means both firms choose the soft action, high price, no wasteful ad spend, share a standard, and together they earn higher profits. Defection means one firm tries to grab a larger share, cut price, flood the market with ads, ignore the standard. The strategic relevance is that even though both firms would be better off cooperating, the structure of the payoff makes defection the safest personal choice, leading to a worse outcome for both. Exactly the dilemma that managers must recognize when they evaluate competitive moves. Explanation: a game-theoretic representation of the PD uses a 2x2 payoff matrix. Each row represents the actions of firm A, cooperate, C, or defect, D, and each column the actions of firm B. A typical numerical example is: the payoff matrix is as follows. When firm A chooses C and firm B chooses C, the payoffs are 4 to A and 4 to B. When firm A chooses C and firm B chooses D, the payoffs are 1 to A and 5 to B. When firm A chooses D and firm B chooses C, the payoffs are 5 to A and 1 to B. When both choose D, the payoffs are 2 to A and 2 to B. The first number in each cell is firm A's profit, the second is firm B's. Reading the matrix, if both cooperate they each earn 4, the best joint outcome. If a defects while B cooperates, it gets 5, a higher individual profit, while B drops to 1, the worst for B. The matrix makes clear the incentives. Every firm's best response to the other's choice is to defect, because 5 is greater than 4 when the opponent cooperates and 2 is greater than 1 when the opponent defects. By laying out the numbers, the matrix turns the abstract story into a concrete decision table that managers can plug their own cost, revenue figures into. A Nash equilibrium occurs when no player can improve his payoff by unilaterally changing his action. In the one-shot PD, the strategy profile open parenthesis D, D close parenthesis is a Nash equilibrium because each firm's best response to the other's defect is also to defect. 2 greater than 1 for A, 2 greater than 1 for B. This equilibrium is also a dominant strategy equilibrium. Defect dominates cooperate for each firm regardless of what the rival does. Formally, a strategy S sub I is dominant for player I if for all S sub minus I in S sub minus I colon pi sub I of S I comma S sub minus I greater than or equal to pi sub I of S prime I comma S sub minus I, where S sub minus I denotes the opponent's strategy set and pi sub I the profit function. Because D satisfies the inequality for both rows of the matrix, open parenthesis D comma D close parenthesis is the unique Nash equilibrium and also the unique dominant strategy equilibrium. The result shows why rational, self-interested firms can end up in a mutually harmful outcome without any coordination device. Explanation: comparative static studies how changing the numbers in the payoff matrix changes the equilibrium. Suppose the profit loss from being betrayed, the one in the C, D cell, becomes less severe because the market has a safety net, changing the matrix to C column D column. Row C column C gives 4, 4, column D gives 2, 5. Row D column C gives 5, 2, column D gives 2, 1. Now the best response to the opponent's cooperation is still to defect, 5 greater than 4. But the downside of cooperating while the rival defects is only 2 instead of 1. If the reward for mutual defection, 2, 2, were increased to 3, 3 because the firms can cut costs together, the matrix becomes C column D column. Row C column C gives 4, 4, column D gives 2, 5. Row D column C gives 5, 2, column D gives 3, 3. Now each firm's best response to a rival's defection is also to defect, 3 greater than 2, so D, D remains the Nash equilibrium. However, if we raise the payoff from mutual cooperation enough, say to 6, 6, the matrix becomes C column D column. Row C column C gives 6, 6, column D gives 2, 5. Row D column C gives 5,2, column D gives 3,3. Now cooperation strictly dominates defection because 6 greater than 5 and 6 greater than 3, turning the game into a coordination game with C, C as the unique Nash equilibrium. By tweaking the payoffs, analysts can see what policy levers, subsidies, penalties, cost-sharing agreements might shift firms from the inefficient defect outcome to the efficient cooperate outcome. When the same two firms interact repeatedly, the shadow of the future can sustain cooperation. In an infinitely repeated PD, a trigger strategy such as Grim Trigger works as follows: cooperate in period 1, keep cooperating as long as no one has defected. If any player defects, switch to permanent defection forever. The condition for this strategy to be a subgame perfect equilibrium, or SPE, is that the present value of cooperating exceeds the one-time gain from defection. Pi c over open 1 minus delta close is greater than or equal to pi d plus delta times pi d over open 1 minus delta close, where pi c is the per period cooperative profit pi d, the one period profit from defecting, while the other cooperates, and delta belongs to the interval 0 to 1, the discount factor how much firms value future profits. Rearranging gives the classic inequality. Delta greater than or equal to open pi d minus pi c close, divided by open pi d minus pi p close, where pi p is the profit when both defect. If delta is high, future profits are valued highly. Cooperation can be sustained as an SPE. The Folk theorem extends this result for any feasible payoff vector that gives each player more than their min-max or punishment payoff. There exists some delta close enough to 1, making it a Nash equilibrium of the repeated game. In practice, this explains why rivals may keep prices high for years, only dropping to a price war when market conditions change. For example, entry of a new firm lowers delta, because the future becomes less certain. The PD framework helps interpret two classic oligopoly models. In the Bertrand price competition model, firms simultaneously set prices. If marginal costs are equal and prices are above cost, each firm has an incentive to undercut the rival by a tiny amount to capture the whole market, a classic defection. The payoff matrix looks like a PD. Cooperate equals set a high price defect equals slightly lower price. The Nash equilibrium is price equals marginal cost, which is the defect outcome yielding 0 economic profit. In Carnot quantity competition, firms choose quantities. Here the best response functions are downward sloping. Each firm's profit is higher if it produces a bit more while the rival sticks to its chosen quantity. The strategic interaction can still be mapped onto a PD. Cooperate equals restrict output high price defect equals produce more lower price. The Carnot equilibrium yields higher prices than Bertrand, but still lower than the joint profit, maximizing monopoly quantity, the classic inefficiency of a one-shot PD. Understanding the PD helps managers see why overt collusion, explicit agreement on price or quantity, would move the outcome from the Nash equilibrium toward the cooperative point, and why the market tends to revert to the non-cooperative equilibrium without enforcement mechanisms. Antitrust law treats explicit collusion, price fixing, market sharing, as illegal because it mimics the cooperative outcome that the prisoner's dilemma shows would be socially optimal, but is unstable without enforcement. The dilemma framework clarifies the legal line. Firms may engage in tacit coordination, for example, signaling through price leadership, because no explicit contract exists, but any agreement that directly sets prices or limits output is a binding cooperative strategy that the law prohibits. Regulators use the prisoner's dilemma logic to assess deviation incentives. If an alleged cartel can be shown to have a high gain from defection, pi sub d minus pi sub c, relative to the expected punishment, fines, criminal sanctions, the cartel is unlikely to be stable, suggesting that observed coordination may be merely tacit. Conversely, severe penalties raise the punishment payoff, reducing the temptation to defect and making the cartel more durable, which is why antitrust agencies impose large fines, essentially altering the payoff matrix to make the cooperative, illegal outcome unattractive. The prisoner's dilemma also helps design leniency programs. By offering immunity to the first firm that reports a cartel, regulators increase the expected payoff of defection for each member, turning the cartel's internal game from a prisoner's dilemma into a coordination game where everyone prefers to defect and report, thereby destabilizing the illegal agreement. Data: two firms A and B produce a homogeneous product. Market demand: P equals 100 minus Q, where Q equals Q sub A plus Q sub B. Both have constant marginal cost C equals 20. The game is a one-shot prisoner's dilemma where each firm can either cooperate, set quantity Q superscript C equals 20, which yields the joint profit maximizing Carnot quantity, or defect, choose quantity Q superscript D equals 40, which is the Carnot best response to the rival's cooperation. Payoff calculation. If both cooperate, Q sub A equals Q sub B equals 20 leads to Q equals 40 leads to P equals 60. Profit for each firm: pi sub I equals open parenthesis P minus C close parenthesis times Q sub I equals open parenthesis 60 minus 20 close parenthesis times 20 equals 800. If a defects in B cooperates, Q sub A equals 40, Q sub B equals 20 leads to Q equals 60 leads to P equals 40. Pi sub A equals open parenthesis 40 minus 20 close parenthesis times 40 equals 800. Pi sub B equals open parenthesis 40 minus 20 close parenthesis times 20 equals 400. If both defect, Q sub A equals Q sub B equals 40 leads to Q equals 80 leads to P equals 20. Pi sub I equals open parenthesis 20 minus 20 close parenthesis times 40 equals 0. Payoff matrix: rows for firm A and columns for firm B. When both choose cooperate, the outcome is 800, 800. When a cooperates and B defects, the outcome is 400, 800. When a defects and B cooperates, the outcome is 800, 400. When both defect, the outcome is 0, 0. Equilibrium: the dominant strategy for each firm is to defect, and the unique Nash equilibrium is defect, defect with zero profit for each firm. Total welfare: sum of profits plus consumer surplus. Consumer surplus under cooperate, cooperate, price equals 80, quantity equals 20, consumer surplus equals 0.5 times open parenthesis 100 minus 80 close parenthesis times 20 equals 200. Total welfare equals 2 times 600 plus 200 equals 1,400. Under defect, defect, price equals 20, quantity equals 80, consumer surplus equals 0.5 times open parenthesis 100 minus 20 close parenthesis times 80 equals 3,200. Profit equals 0, so total welfare equals 3,200, which is higher even though firms earn nothing. The classic trade-off between firm profit and consumer surplus in a prisoner's dilemma. Deviation incentive. From cooperate, cooperate a firm can earn 1,200 by deviating to defect while the rival stays at cooperate, compared to 600 when staying cooperative. The gain from deviation delta equals 600 exceeds any possible punishment because the game is one shot, confirming that cooperate is not stable. Hence the unique Nash equilibrium is defect, defect with zero profit for each firm, even though total welfare is larger in the cooperative outcome. This problem tests the student's ability to 1. Construct the payoff matrix from cost-demand data, 2. Identify dominant strategies and Nash equilibrium, 3. Compute consumer surplus and total welfare, and 4. Evaluate the incentive to deviate. All core skills for strategic microeconomic analysis.